Welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris. Across from me, digitally at least, is Zach Ragan of A to Z Sports. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to that regularly, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed and rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. Because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our episodes when we drop them on Mondays. And also on Mondays is this live stream where we record the show. You can come in here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, check it out, hang out, leave comments, literally be a part of the show. I can't emphasize this enough. You can watch and be a part of the show. It's tons of fun every week, 4 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays. So subscribe to YouTube also. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button. There we go. I'm hip with it. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, A to Z Sports.com, and Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville to find all the stuff we write and post on the social medias. Instagram too. I'll drop that in here. Follow the Big Orange Podcast on Instagram. We created it just a little bit ago, and it's close to 100 followers. Go follow that too. All right. Folks are already pouring in here. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. It has been a big news day. Convenient for us, Zach. We thought it might be a little slow. There were 3 transfer players committing today. All 3, I would say, likely or leaning to Tennessee. 1 committed at 1 p.m. That would be wide receiver Dante Thornton. You're saying it right now. The comments are saying it literally as we start this show. Omar Norman-Lott just committed to Tennessee. Transfer from Arizona State, I believe, defensive lineman. And then finally, you got, is it Campbell?
Yes.
Charles Campbell? Am I making?
John.
Charles Campbell's a kicker. That's right. Charles Campbell was the transfer kicker that Tennessee got just a few weeks ago. John Campbell, and he's an offensive lineman from Miami that Tennessee is working on. That one I think is the most up in the air, but I think it's also still a Tennessee lean from what I've heard, what I've seen. But that one we won't know during the course of the show. But 2 big transfer commitments picked up. One literally as we are speaking here. But Juwan Mitchell, linebacker for the Vols, transferring out. We're going to talk about it all. Zach, what's up?
Big news day, right? I mean, it's a huge news day for the NFL with all the fired coaches and interviews happening like crazy. So been watching all that. Then with the portal stuff, Tennessee picking up a couple of guys, maybe get another one. Got a guy hitting the portal. Seen a few guys announce their destinations that transfer from Tennessee in recent days with Jimmy Holiday going to Western Kentucky and Justin Williams-Thomas flipping from, was it Stanford to Cal or Cal to Stanford? Yep. Stanford to Cal. Yeah, that was kind of odd. But exciting couple of days here just after the season ended.
It is pretty nice. That's Tennessee for you. Always something to talk about. This day is no different. I think this is obviously a little bittersweet of a day. You get 2 big commitments at positions of need. That's great. Well, do you consider wide receiver position of need a position of want?
When you watch Dante Thornton play, I know he didn't put up huge numbers at Oregon last year, like 17, 18 catches for 300 and some yards, but that's a pretty high yards per catch average. Is like 21, 22 yards per catch, which was more than Jalen Hyatt this season at Tennessee. So that dude's a big play waiting to happen. And look at what guys did before they played for Josh Heupel. Cedric Tillman, Velus Jones, and then after. So this guy, I wrote it today. I mean, Tennessee could have another Biletnikoff winner next year, and I don't know which wide receiver it'll be. It could be literally any of the 4, to be honest.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. And actually, I guess we can include this too. Since the last time we recorded, we did a midweek segment last week. We speculated the Walker Merrill was probably leaving. That became true. Walker Merrill is out of here. And so there's been just a lot of action as far as this goes. I think a lot of people have been waiting sort of for this moment to finally come. A lot of Tennessee fans were like, aren't we supposed to be busy in the portal? Team is still pretty thin. We got to pick up some guys. Well, here it is. This is, I think, the start of going from a trickle to a flow, maybe. And still no movement at defensive back, which is interesting. I think there's some to be said there. And then, obviously, with Juwan Mitchell going out, do you have the depth that you want there? Are you chasing more linebackers? Are you chasing more linemen? I mean, Omar Norman-Lott's a great pickup, former 4-star defensive lineman at Arizona State, kid from California, actually. Interesting choice choosing Tennessee, but former 4-star, that's a great pickup. And you got a decent set on defensive line for sure. But are you still looking for that? But I think the main one that people are looking at still, transfers are picking up, and you're still not hearing anything about DBs. I don't know how much stock to put in that.
I don't either. I know that Josh Heupel's big on culture, obviously, and you got to trust him on that because he's completely changed the culture at Tennessee in a very short amount of time. So maybe he doesn't want to bring in some of these guys that we've pointed out. I know there was one DB that committed. Was it the Syracuse guy that committed to LSU this week? That I really felt like Tennessee should have got in there with. I mean, that guy was he's like the third highest graded DB in the ACC last year. We talked about how not everybody in the portal can help you. You talk about a guy that was one of the best DBs in the ACC, even if it is the ACC. That's seemingly a guy that can help you, and Tennessee didn't really go after him at all. They were never really involved in that. LSU's added several DBs through this cycle, so maybe it's a culture thing. If it is, I understand it. I mean, like I said, you gotta trust Heupel on this until you can't, and we're still very early into this rebuilding thing. Even after an 11-win season, this is still Heupel rebuilding this whole program, and he's still got a ways to go before he gets the depth to where he wants it to be, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But it is puzzling, and I don't really know why they haven't taken anybody other than they just don't think they're a good fit, which is, we don't know all the information there, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, how they feel about these guys. And like I said, we just got to trust that that's what's going on.
Well, we still got people joining us here. I saw Nugs just showed up. What's up? Thanks to everybody for watching. Eric, what's up? Big Ten Jeff is in the comments too. Jeffrey Benson, the better Jeff. The Jeff.
Oh, Jeff's already given it to me over my top 25 rankings. I'll get to that in a minute after you take care of some business here.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about all of that, and I'll say, Zach, I think your rankings are just fine. But before we get down that rabbit hole, I got to tell you, as always, about our amazing sponsors, Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook Sports gives you that chance every week when you go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no guys across the pond setting lines for American sports. Just the best team of odds makers in the business behind the counter at Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, Superbook features some of the best odds and promo bets you will find anywhere. Download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com and start your battle against Vegas right now. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Superbook Sports. If you're trying to bet on the national championship game tonight, nowhere better to do it than Superbook. Go check it out. My preferred outcome for the national championship is for the field to fall in and for the game to get canceled. So going back, Dante Thornton, Omar Norman-Lott, hopefully John Campbell, offensive tackle, off right. I believe so we decided Andre Carrick, the kid from Texas, was more guard. Maybe this kid is the replacement for
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. I was thinking Wanye Morris. Why was I thinking Wanye? They came in at the same time.
Yeah.
Wanye Morris. Oh boy. For Darnell Wright. Apologies there. Replacement for Darnell Wright, possibly. So assuming that all comes to fruition, the offensive lineman is from Florida and choosing between Tennessee, Florida, and Florida State. Again, I've heard it's kind of a Tennessee lean, but not totally sure how that might shake out. But yeah, still with no defensive backs, I don't know what they're thinking, and I will trust Heupel. At this point, I'll trust him for a good long while. He has bought some leash, that is for sure. I mean, an 11-2, the best season in forever. And what more can you say about what happened in the last year with Josh Heupel? So obviously, he's bought plenty of time in my book. Mike Vrabel, on the other hand, has far surpassed his time in my book, but just for reference in terms of how I feel about coaches. But I don't know. The transfer portal is just such a two-edged sword because, yeah, maybe it is this culture thing why they're not bringing in DBs. You also have the factor there where you brought in Keenan Peely from BYU, who you think is probably going to be a starter, and that sort of sends a signal to Juwan Mitchell to bounce out of here. And so it's this great thing, great news day, but also, Juwan Mitchell is leaving, and he's a guy that was a nice contributor this season. So sort of two sides of a coin there.
Yeah, I don't think the Juwan Mitchell news was too surprising. I think we were both surprised that he came back this season, and he was kind of in and out. He had that nice play against Kentucky where Danico Slaughter, made that huge hit, and he got the interception off the carom there, which was a fun play, fun night, fun game. But otherwise, I don't know. He never really carved out like you're going to count on this guy every down type role. I mean, Aaron Beasley's that guy. Peely's going to be that guy. You got some young guys coming up, like's been mentioned. So wasn't too much of a shock to see him go. You'd still like to have that depth, obviously. I mean, he has a ton of experience playing at Texas and, now at Tennessee. But that's just this world we live in now with the transfer portal. If you're not a starter, there's a good chance that you might transfer. It's like the situation with Walker Merrill that you referenced at the start. I mean, Walker Merrill was pretty much the number 4 wide receiver for the bowl game, and then didn't see any action, and was the number 4 wide receiver before Thornton commits, and that pushes him down to number 5. If you're the number 5 wide receiver in this offense, you're probably not going to see much time unless there's injuries, and he's going to be a junior this upcoming year, so probably feels like his clock's ticking. Maybe thinks he can get to the NFL because he is a really talented guy, but that's the deal with the portal, and that's why there's been like some Taven Jackson smoke around. Is he going to transfer or not? He kind of sent a cryptic tweet out the other night. And is it a play for NIL money? What's the deal? If there is going to be an odd man out in that quarterback room, he's the guy. But if he leaves, you've got two scholarship quarterbacks. And one of them's a true freshman in Nico, which I think he's going to be as advertised, but he still has to go out there and prove it. And he still has a lot of learning to do, and he has to learn this offense. I mean, game 1 happens and Joe Milton gets hurt next fall in like the first game, you got to turn it over to Nico. And I'm not saying he won't be able to handle it, but that's a lot to put on a true freshman. I mean, you would like to have a guy that has some experience there to kind of fill that gap in until Nico is truly ready, because how it is with quarterbacks. You see in the NFL all the time. You throw them out there as rookies. I mean, like Malik Willis with the Titans. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen or how they're going to react to that stage. So, the downside with Jackson, if he leaves, and we don't know if he is or not, how are you going to find a backup quarterback in the portal? I mean, you go in the portal because you want a starting spot. And Tennessee is going to have a competition, and I feel like that's been put out there to try to keep Jackson around. And I hope that he does have a legitimate shot to win the job. Like, I hope the best person wins the job. If it's Jackson over Milton, then so be it. If it's Milton, then great. Let's see them go. But it's a tough spot to be in as a coach right now, because you really got to have that number 3 quarterback, and you want them to be somebody capable, but they're just hard to find. I mean, if you got a 3-star guy that's pretty talented, maybe they go to a group of 5 school to start instead of going to be a backup at Tennessee. It's a difficult thing to navigate right now. It's almost got to the point where you need to recruit a backup quarterback. You need to sign like a borderline 3-star guy that you're not expecting to start, that is okay with being that backup. Like, you got to go search for that in high school, because I don't think you're going to find one in the portal.
It is such a weird time to be. It's a weird time to have a resurgent season like Tennessee did, because I think in a few years, when the transfer portal and NIL is more set in and more smoothed out, I also think there's kind of this talk of shifting around the early signing period, because the early signing period is like strangling coaches to death. There's 0 days off. I mean, it never ends. And I think there's going to be changes there that are implemented. And it's tough because you want to utilize what is happening right now as much as you can. And maybe I'm thinking about it a little wrong. Maybe it's the prime time for Tennessee to have a resurgent season because they can take advantage of how Wild West everything is right now. And so it's so hard to really determine exactly which direction it's going to go. But things are just turbulent. And you add this onto the conversation also, the conference realignment, because the meaning of what it is to come and be an SEC football player is going to change here in the next couple of years, potentially by next year. The talk is with Texas and Oklahoma, if the Big 12 and them can settle up and they get out of there, I mean, it could be next year, probably the
or
year
2024. After. Most likely. 2025 is when it's scheduled, I believe, but there's been reports that it could happen in 2024. I don't think it could happen in 2023. That would be moving a little too quick with.
Oh, no. I don't mean like this coming season.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're in that weird in between.
I should have said that better.
We're in that weird in between thing right now where the season's over for everybody except Georgia and TCU, which will be over in a few hours here. So it's like, does next year mean 2023? Does it mean 2024? It's that weird time of year. I wanted to bring up real quick before we moved on from that. Jeff mentioned the walk-on when we were talking about the quarterback thing with the transfer portal. I mean, that's kind of what Tennessee's done right now. I mean, Gaston Moore was the backup in the Orange Bowl, and he was a walk-on from UCF. But, I mean, that's an option, of course, but not every walk-on is going to turn out to be Stetson Bennett and end up leading you to a championship or something. I mean, most of the time those guys aren't going to be able to go out there and win a game against Missouri. Like, they're probably not going to lead you to a win in that game. They're just not. Like, you need somebody that can operate the offense at a decently high level, at least in my opinion. And you hope you never need those guys, but that, we've seen plenty of times where, in the bowl game, if Joe Milton goes down, all of a sudden Gaston Moore's in the game against Clemson, and that defensive line would have eaten him alive. It would have been ugly.
Yeah, that conversation is interesting, especially when it comes to like Stetson Bennett, because you kind of think like, who would Stetson Bennett also be a starter for in the SEC? As great of a story as that is, and I'm not saying, Georgia can suck it as far as I'm concerned, but it is a great college football story, him being a walk-on and stuff. But he would start at like Missouri, Vanderbilt. Will Rogers would probably be the guy at Mississippi State. Joe Milton would probably be the guy at Tennessee. Hendon Hooker would definitely be the guy at Tennessee. Who would he start over? Like, you look at even that kid who's about to play in the national championship game, and there's a number of quarterbacks already in the SEC that would start. Bryce Young, for sure. Bryce Young would start over anyone else in the SEC.
Yeah.
So
that's not uncommon, though. I mean, if you think back in the history of college football, look at all the great college football quarterbacks that won Heisman trophies and won national championships and never did anything in the NFL. I mean, Jason White, Rex Grossman. I mean, I guess Grossman had an okay. I mean, he started some games and went to a Super Bowl, I think, but that was the defense with the Bears. It wasn't that uncommon back in. I mean, Alabama's had a ton of those guys, right? I mean, their whole first half of Saban's dominance was a bunch of guys that A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy,
game manager.
A lot of guys that were never going to really do much in the NFL.
Yeah, the quarterback in the age of the transfer portal and NIL is really something. And we'll see how it goes with Taven. Yeah, he had the cryptic tweet, and I was thinking if he goes, he's going to go in spring after spring practice happens, and it's solidified that he's the backup.
You can do that tweeting stuff for some leverage. I fully believe that's what Jalen Wright did, especially since he went back and deleted the tweet just after the new NIL deal was announced there at Spire Sports or the Volunteer Club. So I definitely think that's what it is. I mean, these kids know as soon as they tweet it, it's going to be a huge deal. We're going to be talking about it. People are going to be writing about it. It's going to be all over social media. There's going to be pressure on the NIL collectives to get something done. I do think you kind of roll the dice, though, a little bit, because it's like, okay, how much are you going to pay the number 3 quarterback? What kind of NIL deal are you going to give that guy?
Yeah, because, I mean, that was the first thing I texted you when we were talking about that Taven Jackson tweet, he tweets that, and we kind of assume that it's like a, hey buddy, I'm over here, I need my cut too. And I kind of go like, you're really you're on the borderline, my man. This is you're not a guy that's gonna pop up here and just command money.
It's a shame because we really don't know what he can do.
I know, but he hasn't had the time on the football field to prove and say, hey, I'm that guy, and I deserve some change in my pocket for what I've done. Well, you haven't played. I mean, it's the nature of the position. That's quarterback, but it's just tough. Like, you don't want to be harsh because I really like the kid. He seems like a good kid that could probably compete for the position, but he's just caught in between, the highest rated quarterback recruit Tennessee has ever had, and Joe Milton. So that's
the dude that can throw it further than anybody else on earth.
Exactly. It's tough. But otherwise, we can get more granular. We've really kind of been having a 1,000-foot conversation there, but I actually wanted to talk about some of the specifics on some of the guys that committed today. Like Steve, I think this is a good thing to talk about. Steve Parker says, not trying to put a wet blanket on the Oregon kid coming, but why doesn't he want to stay and play with a Heisman frontrunner next season? I just always want to ask a kid that is leaving. And we can get a little into Dante Thornton and thoughts there. We've mentioned his stats are a little skewed. But in terms of him not wanting to stay, I feel like everybody just kind of has different motivations for things. You never really know.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you watch. VolQuest put out an interview with him, I believe Sunday after his visit to Tennessee, and it's like a 3 or 4 minute long video. And I watched it yesterday evening, and the guy was like very, very clearly wants to be a Biletnikoff winner, and he views the fact that Jalen Hyatt did not have a very good season in 2021, wasn't really focused. He admits that, rededicated himself to working hard and putting in the work to become an elite receiver. And then it paid off in a huge way. I mean, he goes out and has a massive year, one of the best years ever by a Tennessee wide receiver, and wins the Biletnikoff. And it just shows you, I mean, when you combine that with, like we talked about with Cedric Tillman and Bayless and even Javonte Payton, he had a pretty good year, his 1 year at Tennessee. You see these types of seasons from these guys that had numbers like Thornton did at Oregon, where they weren't, gaudy numbers where it was just wow, this guy put up 1,000 yards. Like, it wasn't that. And I didn't watch a lot of Oregon, so I don't know exactly the situation. I've watched his highlights, which obviously shows the good, shows his potential. He's real tall, long, has good speed, 4'4" guy, can kind of be elusive and make some nice moves in the open field. Like, that's a dream for Tennessee's offense. So maybe he feels like Oregon just wasn't utilizing him in the correct way. I mean, you can have a talented quarterback and a talented wide receiver and not get the most out of those guys. I mean, look at Josh Dobbs, his whole career. I mean, those wide receivers maybe could have put up better numbers if they put Dobbs in a better situation. Not that they were bad numbers by any means; those were some pretty good offenses. But coaching has a big impact on it, and I think he just sees what's happening at Tennessee and he wants to be a part of it. That's my gut instinct on it, at least.
Yeah, we're purely extrapolating just from the things that he said. He hasn't said this to us, but he just seems like an excellent fit for this offense. And Tennessee just throws the ball all over the yard, That's the nature of what Josh Heupel does. And if you're him, why would you not want to come here? Clearly, Tennessee showed this season that if you come here, you very may well have a chance to compete for a national championship. Tennessee was one stupid loss to South Carolina away from being in the playoff. And you can sell and be like, you're the guy that takes us there finally. And then on top of that, you can be like, you're going to load up on stats here, man. Because if you win that job in the rotation, and I think he probably will, it does bring up the question, does Ramel Keaton, what exactly is his role if Thornton ends up moving in there?
That's the biggest conversation I think that people are concerned about. And look, you have to have depth. Like we saw that this year. You have to have quality depth. And the fact that Keaton was able to step up when Tillman went down was huge for this offense and really showed how important that is. And Keaton's been a guy, I mean, he said earlier during the season that, he never really thought about the portal after 2021. He realized he needed to work harder. So I think he kind of sees the big picture. And he's also signed a new NIL deal with the Volunteer Club, which that's not binding, obviously. I mean, that technically is separate from playing for Tennessee. I mean, that's supposed to be a completely separate entity, but that is kind of how those deals are viewed, is like, hey, he signed it, he's staying. He also said in the locker room to, I think, 24/7 Sports after the Orange Bowl, like, that they have their sights set higher next year. So he wants to win a championship. He wants to come back and help this program do great things. But yeah, I do think of those three wide receivers, him, Brew McCoy, and Squirrel White, I do think Keaton is the one most at risk because, Thornton can play outside and inside. He's a tall guy, but he can play in the slot. He has experience playing in the slot. Squirrel's probably going to be that guy, but, we've seen how Heupel moves them around, those switch releases that he uses. You got White as your deep threat, your speed guy. Thornton taking over that kind of Tillman, Keaton role. And then Brew McCoy is more of your short yardage, almost like an Anquan Bolden type guy that's going to go out there and catch a 7-yard pass and turn it into 12 or 13 yards because DBs can't tackle him. He's so big. We saw in the Clemson game when he just kind of spun that Clemson DB around. So I think, yeah, Keaton, his role is the one that's in danger there. But look, Josh Heupel adapts his offense. Maybe he runs more 4 wide receiver sets. Maybe he rotates a little more next year to keep guys fresh throughout games. I mean, because of their tempo, they don't sub a lot in the middle of drives. And if they do, it's usually down close to the goal line where they bring in, bigger personnel, extra tight end or a fullback or something. But he's shown a willingness to adapt and evolve. So we can't rule out that there will be some tweaks where he utilizes 4 wide receivers more next year.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do. That's for sure. Because, you can put it this way. The talent's all there as long as Keaton stays. And so who's going to be those guys that step up? It's going to be exciting to watch. Spring and fall ball are going to be really interesting with this team. But to maybe just wrap up that conversation, I mean, we could talk more granularly about Omar-Lott. I never know with guys like that. Can you just call him Omar-Lott? Does it every time? Does it have to be Norman-Lott? Who knows? But Norman-Lott.
One of these guys, and maybe it's this guy, but there's always one of these transfer guys that you don't really think that much about, and it ends up being like, whoa, thank God we got that guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he's going to be that guy, but that's kind of my gut feeling because he wasn't really on the radar real heavy, right, until lately. And then he just kind of pops up. He's sandwiched in between Thornton and then this offensive lineman that you really need later to replace Darnell Wright. And this guy's more under the radar. Watch him end up being like one of the most important players for Tennessee on that defensive line next year.
Man, I hope so. It would be
him and Omari Thomas like beside each other. That's a pretty insane middle of your defensive line.
I hope so. That would be so nice to have a good surprise like that on defense. Obviously, with Heupel, you've had plenty of those dudes on offense already just in 2 years. But on defense, it would be so nice to have that pop up.
Asher says, I can't keep up with all this transfer portal stuff. Look, nobody can. It's so all over the place. It's happening so fast. And luckily, I think it ends January 15th is when the window closes for 16th. Yeah, somewhere in the middle of January. The window closes until May, I believe. So it'll calm down for a little while, and then it'll kick back up after spring practice. And there'll be a whole nother round of all of this, and then jockeying around trying to figure out who goes where.
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. And then with I'll say before we get into the final part of this conversation, we'll talk about maybe if we do a midweek segment like we have been, we can talk about John Campbell if he ends up committing. If he doesn't, we might just skip that. But if he ends up at Tennessee, we'll talk about that maybe in the midweek. He just set his commitment at 7:00 tonight, and I'm going to be at a friend's house watching the national championship at that point. So to wrap this conversation up, just want to talk quickly about Juwan Mitchell bouncing out and what that means. We already said it. This had been swirling around for a while. We were surprised he even came back this year. He contributed nicely in 2022. But he still was, I guess you would say, like a part-time starter. It wasn't. He missed the first few games of the season, and we were even skeptical that he would ever play. It ended up, I think he was just kind of injured with a nagging thing and came back, had some nice plays this season. To me, I mean, this is Peely just taking a spot, right? Like that solidified it. I feel like it was just you're bringing in this really senior kid who's been a great team leader for BYU. I think to the point. Did somebody say he has children? Like or what? Not children. A wife? Isn't he married? Yeah. He's like married. He's a grown man with a wife and a mortgage. Peely. Yeah. I mean, that's just what it feels like. And then obviously you hate it because you go like, man, he would have been an amazing depth piece on this team. That would that set of linebackers just jumps off the page and you go, hey, that's a nice little trio right there. And then you bring in your, Caleb Perry, Elijah Herring, the guys that are kind of sitting back there. And it's a nice set of linebackers. Now Mitchell's gone and those backups suddenly become purely young guys unless you go with another transfer. So to you, what exactly does it mean? Should we be too concerned, even though the writing was kind of on the wall here?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not concerned at all because I kind of expected it. I've kind of got the vibe that maybe culturally he wasn't the best fit. I mean, that's nothing negative about him. It just seems like maybe the vibe. I don't know. He didn't play in the first part of that Clemson game. He didn't show up until late in the second quarter, second half, somewhere in there, and it was kind of odd with Jeremy Banks out. You feel like he would have been playing a pretty big role. I think Solon Page was playing a little more instead of him, which was surprising. So I don't know what was going on there, if there's something internal going on. I think it was just time for him to move on, time for the program to move on. I wouldn't be surprised if they do go find another depth piece at linebacker in the portal, just have some experience, maybe a graduate student who wants to play another year in the SEC or something, doesn't really have NFL plans, is okay kind of playing that reserve role. There's plenty of guys in the portal to choose from, so maybe they'll be able to find somebody to fill that gap. And we also got to talk about this Pittsburgh Pat Narduzzi stuff because lots of people in the comments going on about that, which has kind of been a big thing this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to cover quickly about sort of the meaning of that Juwan Mitchell situation. It is what it is. Hopefully Peely ends up being that dude. Obviously Beasley is that dude. So I like where that set of linebackers is at, and hopefully like Herring, he keeps getting better. He flashed at times this season. That'd be nice.
Beasley looks like he's going to become just a superstar in the SEC in his last year. I mean, he really came on throughout the year. He made some good plays. Like he made that fourth down stop against LSU right before the Jalen Hyatt touchdown from Hooker. That was Beasley going right to the right spot to make that play. He kind of quietly did stuff like that all year long. And then we saw towards the end of the year, he's such a good blitzer. And Tennessee has that deal. It looks like when the running back kind of vacates the backfield, they're blitzing no matter what. They're coming because they don't have that extra protection there, and they're going to trust that they can get there faster than the quarterback and get the ball out. And especially against Klubnik in the Orange Bowl, that strategy definitely works. So I'm really excited to see him next year and to kind of see him take that next step.
Yeah, that Clemson game was exciting to see that, to have what looked like a real dog in the middle of that defense. That's fun. That's exciting. So
he's just kind of a go about your business guy. Like he didn't really, not that I have a problem with celebrating at all. I love swagger on the field, like keep it within reason. Don't get a penalty. But I like having that confidence, that kind of that attitude that we saw from Tennessee, really in like the Kentucky game. Like that defense was having fun. We saw some of that in the Clemson game too. But Beasley's just kind of a keep your head down and go get it done and go line back up again. It's fun to watch. Kind of an old school feeling with him.
Absolutely. Hopefully the ascendance continues there with him. And now we can talk a little bit about Narduzzi. Pat Narduzzi. Yeah, Elias says right here. We can start here. Says, Pat Narduzzi gives me heavy pay attention to me vibes. This whole thing with the we should change the rules of football because my feelings are hurt type of stuff, I can't stand it. Nick Saban was a pioneer in this with Gus Malzahn back in the day. The coaches that that get beat by a certain thing, there's a certain type of coach that goes, all right, I'm going to take that and get better. And then there's another type of coach that's going to complain about that and say, well, it was me. Change the rules for me. So Narduzzi, correct me if I'm wrong, he said that he wants microphones in the helmet like the NFL, where you don't have to use signals on the sidelines for players, but for the quarterback specifically, you don't have to use signals to call the plays. But then he says if they do that in college ball, he wants the rules changed where you have to wait until that 25-second play clock starts to snap the ball, which, of course, would derail what Josh Heupel does. Now, we've talked about Josh Heupel's offense operates on the margins. He pushes the rules of football. And you see it, the offense somewhat frequently this season got called for, would it be considered offensive pass interference or whatever it was, where they're blocking downfield and it gets called back, and so he was pushing the rules, but it's all legal. I mean, this isn't going to happen, and this is dumb, but just it just shows you, like. No, I don't know what you want to call Narduzzi. It's not even if you can't beat him, join him, because he's not saying he's going to start using his offense like that. He's just throwing a tantrum and going, change the rules for me or else, because I can't beat this.
Yeah, it's a little more nuanced than just the offense, but you can tell, I think that's the root of it for Narduzzi. This came up talking about sign stealing, and every college football coach is very paranoid apparently about the sign stealing, because the offense is moving so fast, they're giving signals. I mean, you see it at Tennessee games. You got 3 guys on the sideline giving signals. They're looking at one of them, I guess, and however that works, and they're changing it up, and they're holding up screens behind them so TVs can't capture it, and somebody decode the signs. I mean, there's all kinds of paranoia going on, to the point where people are concerned that the guys operating the chains who are hired by the school where the game's at are in on it at times. So that's kind of what led. Comments, though, can tell you where his heart really lies on this, because he said, if they do this and they put the communication in the helmets to eliminate the sideline signals, so that would take all that out, then he thinks that the offenses would move even faster than they already do, because they wouldn't have to look at those signals. So maybe it's like a second or two faster Tennessee can snap the ball. So to combat that, he, like you said, he wants to wait till there's 25 seconds left on the play clock, which would be a full 15 seconds in between every play at minimum to snap the ball, which, that's just not going to happen. But his comments said, if they do that, quote, then we can actually huddle on offense, huddle as a defense, and now we can talk to the Mike linebacker and give a defense. And now all of a sudden we have a real game. And now our offenses, their defenses can't steal signs, because that's what happens.
It's Levis. It's Levis all over again. It's real football.
And he says he's going to propose that rule to the NCAA Rules Committee this offseason. Look, you referenced Nick Saban with it in 2014, when he didn't want the ball snapped before 29 seconds was his particular rule. So it was like 11 seconds, which is still moving pretty fast. But Tennessee, sometimes you can go back and watch, not every time, but there's times there's like 32, 33 seconds almost left on that play clock. I mean, that's how fast they're moving. If it's a short running play, they're getting right back up there within a few seconds and snapping the ball. So it would slow Tennessee's offense down, and Josh Heupel definitely doesn't want that. I mean, that's why he got flagged in the Clemson game, because they were taking so long they were setting the ball and kind of standing over it, looking back at the defense to make sure they're set. I mean, that's not your job as a ref. You spot the ball and you get out of there, and that's on the other team to get set and to run their defense. So I would like to hear Josh Heupel's thoughts on this. I'm sure it's made its way to him, and I'm sure he knows, like the rest of us, that it's never going to pass. If Saban couldn't change the rules, Pat Narduzzi's definitely not going to be able to change the rules. But I would like to have seen his reaction when he first saw this.
Yeah, I think the main problem with that, he may get some sympathy from folks at the Rules Committee. I don't know. But the main problem is that would fundamentally change the way college football is played. I mean, that would, and
they're not going to take offense out of the they're not going to take offense out of the game. Like, you don't want to have less scoring, right? There's zero chance that that's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, good luck, Narduzzi.
I just noticed by accident. I'm going to have to fix this. I was trying to block a spam commenter, and I accidentally blocked Elias Gray over here. I'm going to have to get him out of there. Yeah, it was a porn bot, and
Is it just blocked from commenting? Can you?
I don't know. But I apologize. I'll get it fixed. If he can still watch, I'll get it fixed. and I think he can.
You'd have to send an A to Z gift certificate or something if we have those. We'll have to check with HR.
This is a real travesty, but I just wanted to make sure that I that I say that. I was trying to block the bot.
It's on the record.
And he got caught in the crossfire. He or I guess I don't. Elias. That's either way. That's dumb. Pat Narduzzi's an idiot. And congratulations to him. I don't think that that's going anywhere as far as changing the rules or anything, but had to cover it because it certainly would affect Tennessee deeply if that ever did come to fruition.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think anything's going to happen.
No, but from that else, football. Before we move to basketball, Zach, anything else with football?
I guess I got to talk about these top 25 rankings since Jeff brought up my rankings I put out, and I will say that I fully believe Tennessee should be above Alabama no matter what. I thought that was the case before. I just don't think that you can have the same record and lose head-to-head and lose to LSU and then Tennessee beat LSU like they did and have Alabama ahead of Tennessee. I think there's a lot of Bama bias going there. But admittedly, I think when I put these rankings together and after I've thought about them for about the last 24 hours, I do think Ohio State should probably be at number 4 and Tennessee at number 5. I think Tennessee has better wins because they beat Alabama, who's going to be top 10. They beat Clemson, who's going to be probably 11th or 12th at worst. They beat LSU, who's going to be top 15. And Pittsburgh, I think, could sneak into the top 25. I've got them in mind, and that's really not so much because of what Pittsburgh did. It's just what the other teams around them did, and there's a bunch of 8-5 teams. I don't see an 8-5 team like South Carolina. I think South Carolina is probably one of the 25 best teams in the country, but I don't think you can have an 8-5 team in the final top 25. It's kind of contradictory there, but that's just how I kind of feel about it. But I do think Ohio State making the playoff, losing the way they did to Georgia on the missed field goal, I do think they probably deserve to stay top 4 with everything considered when you bring that up. Yeah, and their 2 losses were much better, or at least one of them was much better than Tennessee's South Carolina loss. So I'll bend the knee on that a bit.
I will. Ohio State.
Okay.
Ohio State is a team that has won nothing this season of significance. They've beat a bunch of elementary school teams in an elementary school league, and they're a joke. So they don't get any sympathy from me. And Jeff, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. All right.
I do think they did perform better in that Georgia game than I initially expected. And that's why I think TCU might have a chance tonight. I still think Georgia wins, of course, and TCU will have to play really perfect. And I think Ohio State's probably a better team than TCU. But Georgia, I mean, they showed some flaws. I mean, Ohio State, if Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt, I think Ohio State wins that game for sure.
It's what makes me ill thinking about, like, if that Georgia game could have just been in Neyland and, you know, you wouldn't have had that. I don't think that same outcome where Tennessee is such a deer in headlights.
Yeah, they put themselves in so many bad situations.
Yeah.
And it's, look, I know it comes across as making excuses for losing that game. I mean, Georgia straight up beat Tennessee that day. They did. But it is still true that Tennessee did things to hurt themselves that day. And the crowd played a big factor in that. And Tennessee did not handle the noise well. They didn't at all. They didn't handle it well at South Carolina. That is one of the things about this team that they're going to have to figure out moving forward. They're going to maybe they learn from these experiences and they get better in that area. But that's one thing this offseason. I know they won at Pittsburgh. They won an early game at LSU, where there's a lot of Tennessee fans down there. It was a lot friendlier than it was at Georgia and South Carolina. But that's something that they've definitely got to work on this offseason. Okay,
I think I got Elias Gray unblocked. So hopefully that works. Just an update there. I'll just leave it there. That's a good conversation that I could have for a while in terms of who's better, who deserves what ranking from the resume they have. You would be hard pressed to get me to steer away from, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU. The only loss outside of that South Carolina game was to the team that's going to win the national championship tonight.
I'll tell you
Come on.
the part about the rankings I don't love Michigan at 3. I just think that you can't drop them further than that. Like I don't think they're probably the third best team in the country after watching a couple of their games late in the season. I mean, they're a good team, no doubt, but I don't, you know, but you can't drop them with one loss in the playoff below third. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. But I guess we could just quickly. Who wins tonight? Who do you think?
I think Georgia wins. I'm torn. I mean, I thought those games on Saturday were going to be blowouts. All right. I thought Georgia was going to have their way with Ohio State. I thought Michigan was going to have their way with TCU. And CJ Stroud looked great. I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Ohio State this year, but I got to imagine that's one of the best games he's played. And I mean, right on time for the NFL draft too. If you're that guy, I mean, that really helps your draft stock a lot. But after watching that game and then TCU Michigan, which was both those games were fantastic. Probably the best day of playoff games we've ever had. But TCU's I mean, I slept on them a lot this year, and I will say, when I was kind of down on TCU, they really hadn't played anybody at that point. But then those last couple of weeks was when their schedule got tougher, and they won those games they needed to win to put themselves in this position. So I think they're a lot better team than I gave them credit for. I think Max Duggan's a gamer that just comes out and shows up under the lights. So I don't know. Like, I think Georgia wins, but I wouldn't be shocked if TCU makes it really interesting and has a chance.
There is a path to TCU winning, but it is almost like Georgia can just sort of turn it on when they need to. It's like it's in there and they don't harness it all the time. But when they need to harness it, suddenly they can jump up and get. I mean, it's what they did to Ohio State. They were dead in the water against Ohio State. And just when it came down to it, man, they finished them off.
Jeff says that Stroud may come back.
Why would you come back?
Why would you come back? But then you see Jared Verse at Florida State is going to be a top 10 pick probably, and he's coming back. And Blake Corum at Michigan today said he's coming back. And I don't understand those decisions at all. So who knows at this point with NIL?
It's because
it out there, maybe it happens. I don't know.
It's because the ACC and the Big Ten are such soft leagues that they're not scared of getting injured. And so, well, actually, Blake Corum got injured this year, I guess. Yeah. No. Jokes aside, there's that as far as football goes. Let's finish with the talk about your top 5 Tennessee basketball Volunteers. Talking about that South Carolina football game. The basketball team went to Columbia, and not only did they not lose like the football team did, they gave South Carolina the single biggest loss in the history of their arena, which I think was since the 90s or so. Just brutalized them. What I believe won by 43. It was like 85-32, something just absolutely annihilated them into oblivion and provided, as Steve says in the comments here, revenge for the football team. It was pretty gratifying. I'm not gonna lie. A little satisfaction there watching Tennessee just drill South Carolina. Now, South Carolina's basketball team is very, very bad. I think there's an actual chance they don't win an SEC game this year because they already lost to Vandy, and that might be one of your only shots at winning one this season. But man, this team, I'll start the conversation this way. If they play the way that they played against South Carolina and against Mississippi State, I was at that Mississippi State game. It was unreal. They smashed Mississippi State too. Mississippi State is not nearly as bad as South Carolina. They're a pretty decent team, actually. They just blew them both away. If Tennessee plays that way when it matters, when we get to tournament time, that's the Final Four team. It is. Now, of course, that's been Rick Barnes' thing. He can't get his teams to play that way when it comes down to it. He did last year in the SEC basketball tournament. But then when they got to the tournament, things changed. But that's it, man. They could beat absolutely anybody playing like that, like they did this weekend.
How much do you think that Josiah Jordan-James coming back and playing 17 minutes or so, how big, I mean, is that like Is that right there the key? Is that what takes this team to a Final Four level? Because it's something we talked about before with him being out, how big of a loss that is, and how important he is, and he comes back, and it's not like he went off in that game or anything, but just his presence being around, allowing Rick Barnes to kind of run his team the way he foresaw running it in the preseason. How big of a difference do you think that makes? And how worried are you about him staying on the court the rest of the year?
I'm certainly worried about him staying on the court for the rest of the year, but he looks good and he's playing, to me, like a solid number of minutes. And if it's too much for him to play any more than that, that's okay, because obviously the contribution's been excellent. And like your game coming up, it's Vandy. You don't need to wear him out against Vandy. You should at least beat them without having to stretch him at all. But I think it's big, Triple J coming back. But to me, the biggest thing, it's been a combination of two things. It's been Josiah coming back, and then it has been Olivier Kama taking this turn to being, he hasn't missed a shot in 2023. And the combination of him suddenly emerging and Triple J coming back, it gives Tennessee this inside-out action on offense that they certainly have not had up to this point in the season, where they can really score inside, they can really score outside. That gives you easier shots outside, and it gives you easier shots inside, and suddenly the offense just works better. And I mean, if they can keep that up, Tennessee is the number one defense in America. It's honestly, so far through the season, the statistics are absurd. It's one of the best college basketball defenses, like in the modern era, statistically so far. I mean, it's up there with like the Virginia team that won the national championship. I mean, they're playing incredibly elite defense, and then you add to that offense, and what that creates is 40-point wins against South Carolina. And what it creates against an actually good team like in Alabama is maybe like a 10-point win. And you have Alabama on your home floor in a couple weeks. And like Tennessee is favored, as of now, Tennessee is favored in every game they have for the rest of the season, as they should be. They are favored to win, at least in like Vegas, they're favored to win the SEC. Kentucky looks like a big old stinker this season. They got absolutely annihilated by Alabama over the weekend.
There are now rumors that John Calipari could be going to Texas.
So things are falling apart up there. That's a different conversation all in itself, honestly. But it's all about playing right at the right time. There's no reason in peaking in January. That's not when you want to be playing your best ball. You want to be playing your best ball in 2 months. But the fact that they can do this, it's exciting, because if they can harness it at the right time, it's the Final Four team, period.
What's this is something else I wanted to ask you, because you're more of a basketball guy than I am. What do you think about Julian Phillips, his play so far, and what does he need to do the rest of the season? I mean, is he living up to what you think, or how do you feel about him right now?
It has been.
And should he be starting?
Well, the person that would start over him is Josiah, and I like him coming off the bench. Actually, it's kind of like Urosh in the starting lineup. It's like you like the guys behind him coming off the bench almost a little bit more. It just kind of operates a little bit better that way. So I say starting him doesn't really matter, because you can take him out 30 seconds into the game, and it's not a huge deal. But it's been underwhelming, but also not totally unsurprising. And he has certainly shown that when he turns the corner, I think he absolutely will turn the corner. I don't think that's in question. It's a win, not an if.
Yeah.
When he turns the corner, it's just going to elevate this team even more. But if Josiah stays healthy, they're going to be battling for minutes, and Josiah is going to get the benefit there. If he does finally get to that point where he's playing 20 plus minutes a game or something. So this is selfish, but I kind of hope that he's playing his best ball at the end of the season, which I think will end up happening.
but I hope that it's not so good that he
goes.
That he comes back. I hope he comes back next season. I mean, that's because I think he'll be really special in time. Like give him a minute. I think he'll be a really high level college basketball player. It's just not there yet. He'll get
that's the weird thing with basketball, though. I mean, a guy like him, where maybe he doesn't just blow up immediately as a true freshman, he'll still end up getting drafted high if he goes just because of potential, or he could, potentially go first round or whatever. Kind of like Kennedy Chandler last year. If Chandler had some more height, he definitely would have been drafted earlier. But the NBA drafts so much on potential. I mean, that's so hard to pass up if you're one of those guys. So I sometimes I don't know how much that factors into it, but you're right. It at least gives Tennessee a chance there to keep him around. And I think you're right. I mean, I think you see the talent, it's flashed, and if he does turn it on later, I mean, Tennessee's just going to be so much better come March when it really matters. I did want to point out my favorite stat from that South Carolina game. You're talking about their defense, is they had 13 steals in the game, and 9 of those steals came off the bench, which is insane to me.
This team is, I don't want to say it's the deepest college basketball team I've ever seen. It is one of the deepest I've ever seen. I would put it that way. That doesn't necessarily translate to wins, depth. I mean, it just kind of means you have adequate players on your bench.
Yeah, we've seen lots of teams with like 7-man rotations win championships.
This team has a 10-man rotation, maybe even more. Like, it's crazy because you drop, like, from Urosh, you go to Adu. And from Adu, you go down to Tobe Awaka, and they're all, I would say, out of all of those, the starter, Urosh, is actually playing the worst.
Feels like Awaka should get some more minutes.
Yes, and I think he will. I think he'll continue to get more minutes. He is a very solid rebounder. Adu has continued to get better and better. He's progressing. And then it's just sort of that almost at every position. I think since the injury, Vescovi has been playing lights out. And then Zakai Ziegler has been playing. He is just sort of throughout the season gotten better and better and better. He's still young, still a sophomore, just continues progressing. I mean, if you can get to the end of the season and Zakai off the bench has become a true, very serious point guard, who is as good at facilitating as I think he can be. Vescovi keeps getting better. You keep Josiah healthy, and he stays on the right track. You get even better play out of Phillips. Kamwa stays playing well and gets even better. I mean, this is a powerful basketball team. As much as we can mock Kentucky, that's a pretty serious game. I think Tennessee will blow Vanderbilt off the floor on Tuesday night. They might not. Vanderbilt is not bad, like just flat out bad, but they're not good. Tennessee should, unless they just have a totally off shooting night, they should win by double digits fairly easily. But that Kentucky game, it's going to be imperative on those big guys to play well. You have to eliminate what's his face out of the game. The center. Why am I drawing a blank? Folks in the comments, help me out here. I can't think. The All-American, the preseason player of the year. Someone.
Yeah.
There are 133 people watching right now. There's somebody. Shibwe, Rusty, coming through for me. Oscar Shibwe. Why was I drawing a blank? This doing live.
So deep. The team's so deep. There's too many players.
Yeah, exactly.
Charlie, I have to interrupt you because the Titans just fired Todd Downing.
Oh!
Ian Rappaport has reported it.
Ian!
And it's not a fake account either.
I told him. That's kind of funny because
look, Austin Stanley has immediately popped in here.
Oh man.
Perfect timing too as we near the end of the show. This is usually when a little bit of Titans talk happens.
You get my actual live reaction to finally our long national nightmare is over.
Pure elation. This is like when Alabama. This is like when Tennessee beat Alabama. Charlie's going to take his shirt off and have a cigar right here on the live stream.
Hey, that's fitting. That's what this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Tennessee Alabama shirt actually. And I mean, this is big time for A to Z content. Of course, every Titans fan is on pins and needles wanting Todd Downing
What
fired.
great timing several hours after the media availability. I mean, not that they were ever going to fire him before the coaches spoke and players spoke today, so they didn't have to answer those questions.
I'm just glad because I love Buck Rising, covers the Titans for A to Z and has a radio show on 104.5 in Nashville. He was very smug before the game yesterday and then this morning where he was like, don't get your hopes up that they're going to fire Downing, blah, blah, blah. And again, big Buck fan. He does good work for A to Z.
He also fired the offensive line coach, secondary coach, and offensive assistant too, if you're keeping up. And I mean, after the offensive line play, I felt like that was probably a given. And in their defense, with Juwan hurt, that didn't help, but he's always hurt. So,
the choice to play Dennis Daly. I mean, come on.
I think there's a lot of people in these comments that, or somebody that could block better than him, or at least not get penalized every play.
I think the worst offensive lineman I've ever seen in the NFL. It was just incredible. Gave up like 14 sacks or something, just an unreal number, and only played a small,
We can quickly spin this too into Josh Dobbs a little bit. It was nice getting to see him start a couple of games for the Titans because he's been in the league since 2017. He's never got a chance to start. I think if we're being objective, he did a lot of good things. He let his inexperience show a couple of times. And a lot of that had to do with not being in the offense, but since December 21st, 22nd, I mean, he hasn't been there very long. There's a couple of things where he could have thrown the hot route or, got the ball out a little quicker, maybe slid protections, little minor things. But outside of that, I thought he played really well and he gave the Titans a chance to win the game. And the mistakes that were made, also a lot of that's on the offensive line for breaking down, allowing guys to get to him. It wasn't a great situation for Dobbs to make his first couple of starts, but after watching what Malik Willis did in that offense, I thought Dobbs played really well and can be a spot start guy for you at minimum.
I mean it.
Yeah, I mean he can jump in there and play
with an offensive line that is, but that same offensive line with a different player other than Dennis Daly. With that mixed with a better offensive coordinator, Dobbs not only wins that game, I think they I don't want to say run away with it, but Jacksonville played terrible in that game.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence did 0 to win that game.
Oh, Trevor Lawrence, I said it to you before we got on here. Trevor Lawrence got that lemon booty. He was scared out there, man. He was just
he saw some ghosts.
I mean, he couldn't deliver when it mattered, and Dobbs got out there and was just calm, collected, got it done. And he, the fumble happened because Dennis Daly sucks. You eliminate that, the Titans win. That single play, the Titans win. And then with a better offensive coordinator, I think they probably score 24 points in that game and win by 8 points. And all credit to Dobbs. Yeah, he's not, if he per se, Tannehill gets shipped out and for some reason he's our starter next year, we're probably not winning a Super Bowl with the guy. But he's serviceable at a baseline. And I think could be pretty, he's really smart, man. He just really grasps concepts well. And he, with that offensive line, he panicked on a few plays and missed some things. But that's kind of the nature of that position when your offensive line is absolute garbage. So all the credit in the world to Josh Dobbs in that game. Did it in just a more than admirable effort that he gave there. I can't thank him enough. It was so fun to just see a Tennessee guy out there until the fumble that gave the Jags the lead back. I mean, I was about to be just absolutely ecstatic. I even was one of the people on the fence where I was like, I kind of hope we lose so that this thing gets ripped apart. I'm tear it down. Making the playoffs gives Vrabel an excuse to not do anything. And I was almost one of those people. But when Dobbs became the starter, I was like, man, I want to see Dobbs win. I want Dobbs to get a chance in a playoff game. That would be so fun. And, to see it stolen on a play that, in my personal opinion, was an incomplete pass is gross. And he gave such a great effort. but is what it is. That offensive line is just so bad. What are you gonna do? And the set of wide receivers so bad. Like, is what it is. But man,
I will say with
love
Dobbs, I saw somebody tweeted about it, and I hadn't thought about it in this way, and I think somebody tweeted at me. It's surprising that Dobbs hadn't at least got a spot start in 6 years. I mean, you stick around in the NFL for 6 years, and you expect at some point. I mean, Nathan Peterman's had several starts, and we saw how awful he was at Tennessee. But somebody brought up, is he at Tennessee? Dobbs was not a good practice player. We saw his practices at times, and they weren't great. I remember in 2013, Josh Dobbs is a true freshman, and Butch Jones came in, and you had Justin Worley, Nathan Peterman, and Riley Ferguson all on the roster. And you had 4 quarterbacks. And I remember going to those practices and watching what little bit they let us see. And even just throwing routes and running through drills, Dobbs looked like the worst of the 4 through those practices. I thought Riley Ferguson looked way better than what he ended up being. At times, I thought Nate Peterman looked like he should be starting over Justin Worley. And I think Butch obviously went with Worley because of the experience, but I understood based on practice not playing Dobbs. And then when he got in games in 2013, second half of 2014, last 2 years he's the starter, we saw the dude just plays well under the lights. He wasn't perfect. He'd be off target on his throws. He was high on throws a lot at Tennessee. But without Dobbs, Butch Jones does not survive 2015, maybe not even 2014, because of the way that he helped them get to a bowl eligibility with that comeback against South Carolina. So you got to wonder, was that the case in the NFL too, where he's good enough to stay on the roster, but he wasn't really showing anything in practice for them to trust him with the starting? And the Titans really had no choice after the Malik Willis disaster and Tannehill's injury. They had to turn to Dobbs, and they really had nothing to lose. I mean, they probably felt like they weren't going to make the playoffs anyway, the way it was trending. And then if you're starting a guy off the street that was on the Lions practice squad, up until right before Christmas, you kind of got a built-in excuse there with the injuries, which I know Charlie does not take that as a proper excuse, but
no.
The national viewpoint, they're going to give him a little bit of leeway this season because of Tannehill and those injuries. Maybe Dobbs showed enough in those 2 games. Hopefully, I'd like to see the Titans give him a chance as a backup, but I feel like somebody in the NFL is going to bring him in to at least be a number 2 if the Titans don't.
I hope they do. I hope that when I say that, I hope the Titans hang on to him.
Valentino brings up, how is Malik a disaster? I'm not saying his career's a disaster. I don't think that at all. I mean,
he couldn't complete a forward pass.
Yeah, he didn't do anything to help the Titans win. I'm not saying that they should give up on him. They knew he was raw when they drafted him. So I'm not suggesting that Titans cut bait and move on from Willis. But at this point in his career, he's not the guy that's going to go out there and win you a football game.
I think he may be. I don't know. It's 100% speculation on my part. He may be a part of the set of players that got J-Rob fired. Kind of like, what were you evaluating? What were you looking at? I mean, he couldn't complete a pass. What more do you want to say? I mean, Valentine, he says Dobbs didn't either. Yes, he did. Dobbs did complete passes. He did, though. That pass, that touchdown pass against Jacksonville is better than most of the passes that Ryan Tannehill threw all season. I mean, like I said, Dobbs wouldn't win you a Super Bowl, I don't think. But, dude, that pass,
I'm not out here
ain't doing anything like that.
I'm not propping Dobbs up as a future NFL starter. Listen, there's 32 teams that could have employed him, and they didn't until the Titans did. He was on a practice squad. So you've got to trust those front office evaluations more than me or a lot of people that are just watching him, on Sundays. But I still think he was better than Willis, and he showed that he can play a more important role than what he has been playing in the NFL the last 5-6 years.
It's a cool thing to think about if Dobbs could be a part of the Titans. Obviously, I mean, he's
a great guy to have too. He's a great locker room guy. The team loves him. He knows he blends in well. He doesn't walk in there there's some people that walk into a situation and it's awkward. They don't fit in immediately. They don't know what to say. They don't know when to be reserved, when to speak up. And Dobbs kind of has that self-awareness where he knows how to fit in. he knows when to speak up, when not to, how to carry himself, and that's really important, especially for a backup quarterback, because that can be a very awkward role. Despite what Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker did this year, that's not the norm. I mean, I don't know if you keep up with the Steelers. You go look at Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, and that situation's ugly. I mean, Trubisky's making comments this week about should have taken more time before he signed, and thought he deserved more time before he got benched for Pickett, who's obviously the better, answer there. Those situations can be weird. I feel like if the Titans keep Dobbs, no matter what happens at the starting position next year with Tannehill, or they go out and get somebody, bring in a veteran, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Garoppolo. I mean, there's lots of different ways they could think about going. I feel like Dobbs is just the perfect guy to be the number 2 behind them and to help them, because he's accepted that role and he's embraced it, and he can be like another coach there on the staff and kind of help. And that communication can be very important.
Yeah, I would love it, because I think Tannehill has been absolutely predisposed to injury. Now that Downing is fired, praise be. I hopefully that offense will improve, and maybe they can use Derrick Henry more effectively in the twilight of his career here. I mean, I think the season kind of proved he's on the downslope now.
Didn't he still have 1,500 yards this year?
Yeah, he was still great.
Crazy that that's like, it was an okay year.
Just think what you could do if it wasn't just what Todd Downing always called
run left on first down every time.
Just running him right into a packed box on every first down. What if you didn't do that? Maybe he could go for a few more yards. Who knows? Unreal. So maybe with a new offensive coordinator, they can do more. And then when Tannehill gets hurt, I hope he doesn't get hurt. But if they keep Dobbs and Tannehill does get hurt, Dobbs could be right there and kind of be maybe a little Ryan Fitzpatrick action. Could sort of be like, hey, that backup's pretty good. Look at him. Get himself a nice contract going forward. He's young-ish.
He's 27, 28, I think.
Yeah, I mean, quarterbacks, you got time.
35, 36. Fitzpatrick went forever.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick went till he was like 40. Tom Brady's 45. So I
he might
love
be
it.
45 years old in Nashville next year, or 46, whatever.
Say that again.
I said Tom Brady might be 46 years old playing in Nashville next year. You never know.
Come on down, Tom.
Look, man, I mean, I know those are crazy scenarios and nobody really knows what'll happen with all that. But after the last NFL offseason, when Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins and Devontae Adams getting traded, and then Garoppolo was certainly going to be traded till he wasn't. I mean, all these crazy things happening. I don't rule anything out. Like, teams are desperate to win, and Mike Vrabel wants to win, and they might do something crazy like that. We'll see. Though if you're a quarterback coming to Tennessee without A.J. Brown, that's not nearly as attractive right now.
I would love to see, now that Vrabel is free of John Robinson, and you've kind of heard that Robinson was a problem of sorts, and kind of what they say, he didn't work collaboratively or something. Maybe now Vrabel, I said I want to like Vrabel really badly. The players love him, and he obviously has been solid taking us to the playoffs those years, even though he lost in the first round. I still appreciate it. I'd love for him to kind of have a renaissance here, and make these changes, and maybe he can do something. Well, who knows? And maybe the starting quarterback could be Josh Dobbs. That would be great. No, I don't know. It's going to be a long off season. So I think that's it. Charlie Burris, that is Zach Ragan. I did want to put a bow on it, because we're not going to record again until after the Tennessee-Kentucky basketball game happens. Just to finish, we found out the name of Oscar Tshiebwe, and then we found out that Todd Downing got fired and got derailed.
Oh yeah, that did happen. Yeah,
I could not in my mind think of Oscar Tshiebwe. Obviously, like I said,
I'm so happy that Todd Downing got fired while we were doing this.
What a relief! 1,000-pound weight off my back. I mean, I was talking to friends earlier today and saying, like, if they keep Downing, I don't know if I'm watching next year, because what's the point? I mean, I'm
surprised they kept him after the DUI.
Yeah, well, and that's what they should have just fired him then. That was dumb. But I mean, I legitimately, I was like, what's the point in watching a team that I know is going to be bad? Why would I do that and just put myself through that? There's no hope in that. And now maybe you get I mean, maybe new quarterback, maybe obviously a new offensive coordinator. Maybe things could change. It was the right thing to do. G White says right here, firing Downing was the right move. All right. So, but with that, Tennessee, Kentucky, it's my favorite thing in the world to have Tennessee beat Kentucky in basketball. Whole side of I was in Kentucky this weekend seeing family, a whole set of people that showed up. They were Kentucky fans dressed in blue. They are so downtrodden right now and discouraged. Their football team stinks. Their basketball team stinks, and that hurts them way worse than the football team. I mean, at least my relatives, they're like, I honestly don't really care about football, but the basketball team, it's ruining my life. And so I just hope that Tennessee beats them by 40, just like they did South Carolina. And I don't know that they will. Tennessee is obviously the better team, and you gotta eliminate Sheboy from the game, foul trouble, or just good defense, which obviously Tennessee plays. So hopefully go and win that game for all of us, because beating Kentucky in basketball is one of the best things that can happen for Tennessee sports in general. So hopefully that does happen, and we'll be talking about that next Monday.
Yeah, if it's a blowout win with all the stuff with Calipari and Kentucky fans kind of in full meltdown mode these days, I mean, it feels like the Tennessee win will just really push them kind of over the ledge where I mean, you kind of see some of their stuff a little more than I do with the Kentucky sports radio and stuff. Are they out on Calipari totally? Are they ready to be done and move on?
I can just tell you, one of my relatives that I was talking to this weekend, it's actually kind of convenient that I was visiting with them. Huge Kentucky fan. And he's one of the Kentucky fans that is just like, I pay attention to basketball, and if football is good, I'll watch. He's like one of those. And he said Calipari could leave, it'd be fine. And then also that Calipari is just he doesn't care about winning. He just cares about getting kids to the league. That was he said that to me multiple times. And if you consider that out, I mean, he still gets you top level players. Every kid on that team is a 5-star, but yeah, I mean, I think they just think that he stinks as an in-game coach, and that if he did leave for Texas, they'd be like, okay, we need a change around here. That's what I feel. I don't think that they are just like, fire this guy, run him out of town on a rail, we're done here. I mean, he won a national championship and keeps bringing in 5-star players. But if there was an amicable, I'm out of here going to Texas, I think Kentucky fans would probably be relieved.
You hope he stays around though, right?
Oh, he can.
Because if they get rid of him, I mean, it's Kentucky.
Yeah.
They don't have any issues getting another coach.
Now that Barnes has his number, he can stay forever, as far as I'm concerned.
Because I feel like Kentucky would like Nate Oates or something. Like, why would you not go call that guy up and offer him whatever to come coach Kentucky? And would you turn that down if you're him? I don't see how you could.
For a program that's willing to pay a basketball coach $10 million a year, and obviously it's Kentucky, the support and loyalty and craziness is built in there almost no matter what with the fan base. There's some really good coaches out there that they could, Nate Oates being one of them for sure, Musselman at Arkansas.
Yeah.
They got options. So stay forever, Cal. It's a lifetime contract. They can't let him go. If this is true, Steve says UK would have to pay Calipari $60 million to go away.
Well, I think that's why the Texas thing is kind of popping up, because they want him to leave on his own. It's like you hope that he sees that it's kind of getting contentious and things aren't going well, and maybe he wants a fresh start. And Texas is a big name school with a lot of money. He could go down there and probably buy recruits just as easy as he can at Kentucky. So I think that's the situation that like everybody kind of wins there. So I hope that that's not what happens and it's just chaos.
Yeah, stay forever. We need you in the SEC, Cal. You can't go.
Well, does he have the lifetime contract, the old Coach K?
Yeah,
lifetime deal. So I mean, if he wants to, I wouldn't leave. Make him fire you.
Absolutely. Make him fire you and then go to Texas.
Yeah, there you go.
That easy.
The buyout
All
life. Makes the Ed Ogeron clip where he says, "We're going to give you your $17 million to leave." He's like, "When you want me gone, which door do you want me to exit? I'm on it."
You can buy. I was looking. My grandparents live in like rural Kentucky, and they had a house close to them, like a pretty nicer new, like early 2000s house. I was just looking at Zillow, just like, what's a house around here cost? It was like 6,500 square feet. There for, and like I think an acre of land for $650,000. In Knoxville, that's like a $2 million house. And it's not like Knoxville has crazy property values. Like, that's not compared to like Nashville. In Nashville, it's like a $5 million house. It's probably not that much. But like, you could buy a lot in Kentucky for $60 million. You could buy the state of Kentucky for $60 million.
There's a lot of great people that have come from Kentucky, but that is true. A lot of people in like the music industry, film industry, it is a lot of talent comes out of that state in various industries, but it is not the most desirable.
It's not
place.
A lot of nice land out there with a lot of.
I wonder why
horses.
That is, because it is like a great like site wise, I don't understand how that happens in certain states and areas. Man, I guess it's just the way the industries and stuff work out.
I honestly don't know, but whatever happens with Cal, I hope it's the biggest disaster possible. That's all. I hope Kentucky the best, and I hope it all falls apart. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan, thank you to everybody for watching. This has been another great show. Todd Downing is fired. Freedom. Thank you, Vrabel. We can stop saying that. God bless everybody. Go beat Kentucky fall basketball. Go Vols. Win that game, and obviously beat Vanderbilt. I don't want to forget that game's happening too. Beat them both. Every transfer out there, come to Tennessee. I think that's it, though. Thank you for watching. We really, really appreciate it. We'll probably have a segment later this week. We'll see what we figure out. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan, A to Z Sports. We'll talk to y'all maybe later this week.
See you guys later.